I'm going to tell you about a woman who spent 3 years believing she was the reason her family was falling apart, until the morning she realized she had been holding the whole thing together all along, and quietly decided to let it fall. Before I get into it, I want to ask you something. Leave your answer in the comments. What's the one thing a parent can say to you that you can never fully unhear? I've been sitting with my answer for a long time. This is the story of how I finally found it. The house on Clearwater Crescent had a way of feeling smaller in winter, not because of the cold. You get used to cold in northern Ontario, but because of what the cold did to the people inside it. It closed windows, shut doors, kept everyone in the same rooms for too long. My stepfather liked to say the house had good bones. What he meant was that it had survived worse than us. I wasn't so sure anymore. I had moved back in 11 months earlier, after my mother's second stroke left her needing help that my stepfather insisted he could provide, but never quite did. I gave up my apartment in Sudbury. I gave up my shifts at the physiotherapy clinic downtown, transferred to a smaller satellite location with fewer hours and less pay. I gave up the version of my life I had spent 4 years carefully building, because my mother needed someone in that house who actually showed up. My stepfather's name was never one I said comfortably. I called him what my mother had always asked me to call him. By his relationship to her, not to me. He was her husband. He was not my father. That distinction had always been clear between us, even when we were pretending otherwise. He came into the picture when I was 14. He was not unkind exactly, at least not at first. But there was always something beneath the surface, a current I couldn't name. He kept careful track of things, who paid for what, whose name was on what, who owed whom, and how much. My mother found it reassuring. She had spent years managing money alone after my father left, and she was tired. Someone who kept track felt to her like someone who cared. I never fully shared that reading. The first real argument happened on a Tuesday in February, 7 weeks after the holidays. I remember it was a Tuesday because I had just worked a double shift covering for a colleague, and I came home to find a folder on the kitchen counter with my name written on the tab in his handwriting. He was sitting at the table when I walked in. My mother was in the living room with the television on low. He didn't get up. "I need you to look at that," he said, nodding at the folder. I set my bag down and opened it. Inside were several pages, a title summary from a real estate agent, a printed email from a mortgage broker, and what appeared to be the beginning of a listing agreement for the house. I closed the folder. "I'm not signing anything," I said. He looked at me the way he always had when I said something he considered naive, like I had mispronounced a word in front of company. "This isn't a negotiation," he said. "Your mother and I have discussed this. The house is too big. We want to downsize. I need your name off the deed before we can list." I looked at him for a moment. "She told me you were thinking about it. She didn't tell me it was decided." "It's decided, then why does my signature matter?" He pushed his chair back and stood up. He was a tall man, and he had learned, over the years, how to use that. "Because the lawyer says it does," he said. "Because your mother added you to the title 8 years ago, when she thought she was sick and she didn't want the house going through probate. That was a precaution. It was never meant to give you a say in what we do with our home." He said our home with a particular weight, the kind that was meant to remind me I wasn't included in that word. "I'd like to talk to my mother," I said. "She's resting. She was watching television 30 seconds ago." His jaw tightened. The air in the kitchen changed the way it does before a storm front moves through. That particular stillness, everything holding its breath. "I have been patient with you," he said slowly. "I have let you stay here. I have said nothing about the cost of having you in this house. The groceries, the utilities, everything I have absorbed without complaint. And I am asking you to do one thing. You're asking me to sign away property my mother put in my name. I'm asking you to respect that this is our house, not yours." I put the folder back on the counter. "I'll think about it." That was when he said it. Not loudly, not in the way you might imagine from someone losing control. He said it quietly, which was somehow worse. "If you won't do this, then I don't see why you need to be here. You can find somewhere else to live tonight." I stood very still. I thought about my mother in the next room. I thought about what she needed, what she couldn't manage without help, what would happen to her if I left. And then I thought about the folder I had read 9 months earlier. The one I had found in the filing cabinet in the spare room while looking for my mother's provincial health card. The one with the original certificate of title, dated 26 years ago, with my mother's name at the top as sole owner. Purchased 3 years before she ever met him. "Okay," I said. He blinked. He had not expected that. "I'll go." I walked to the hallway closet and pulled out the duffel bag I kept there. It had been packed since September. He was still standing in the kitchen doorway when I came back through. He looked at the bag the way people look at something that doesn't quite make sense yet, like the brain hasn't caught up to what the eyes are seeing. "You were already packed," he said. It wasn't a question. I looked at him once. "Tell my mother I'll call her tomorrow." Then I walked out the front door into the February cold, and I did not look back. I didn't go far. I had a basement unit rented since the previous August in a house 3 blocks over, on a street that backed onto the same ravine. The landlord was a retired schoolteacher named Gwen who asked no questions and fixed the radiator without being asked. The unit was small, 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub that took 20 minutes to fill. But it was warm, and it was mine, and nobody in it would ever put a folder on the counter with my name on the tab. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while with my coat still on, listening to the radiator knock and the wind come off the ravine. I wasn't crying. I had thought I might be, but I wasn't. There was something else instead. A particular kind of quiet that settles into a person when they've finally stopped waiting for something to happen and let it happen. I had been in that house for 11 months, taking care of my mother. I had managed her medication schedule, her physiotherapy appointments, her occupational therapist visits, the coordination with her doctor about her blood pressure, and the secondary concerns about her vision. I had done the grocery shopping and the laundry and most of the cooking. I had rearranged my shifts around her needs and covered shortfalls from my own account when his contributions came late or not at all. And still, somehow I had become the obstacle. That was the night I let myself understand something I had been avoiding for a long time. He had never wanted my help in that house. He had wanted my absence from that title. Those were 2 different things, and I had been confusing them. He did not sleep well that night. I know this because my mother called me at 6:40 the next morning and told me so. She had a particular way of offering information about him that made it sound neutral, like she was reporting weather. But I had learned to hear what was underneath. She was worried. She was also, I thought, a little frightened. "He's going to call the lawyer today," she said. "Okay," I said. "He thinks there might be something he missed." A pause. Mija. She had called me that since I was small. An old habit from her mother's side, from a grandmother I had only met twice. "What did you find in that filing cabinet?" "I know you found something." I sat down at my kitchen table. Outside the small basement window, I could see the bottom 8 inches of the fence in the gray February light. "I found the original title," I said, "from when you bought the house." Another pause. "I see," she said finally. "You were the sole owner," I said, "when you bought it. He wasn't on the title until you refinanced in 2009. "Yes," she said quietly, "and when you added me, 8 years ago." That wasn't just a precaution, was it? She didn't answer right away. The television was on in the background. The same morning program she watched every day. The one with the 2 hosts who talked about recipes and human interest stories. I waited. "I wanted you protected," she said. "I knew what he was like about the house. I knew that if something happened to me, he would. He has always seen that house as something he built. Even though," she stopped, "I wanted you to be able to stay. If you needed to, I know, Mom." "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." "You don't need to be sorry." I heard her exhale. "He's going to be very angry when he finds out." "He's going to find out today," I said. He did. From what my mother told me later, he had gone through the same filing cabinet around mid-morning, looking for documents that would prove what he had always assumed, that the house was his in any meaningful sense, that the title was a formality, that he had the authority to decide what happened to it. He had been telling himself that version of the story for so long that he had stopped questioning it. The original certificate of title did not cooperate with that version. He called a lawyer at 11, then another one. By early afternoon, he had spoken to 3 different real estate lawyers, each of whom confirmed the same thing. My mother had been the original sole owner of the property. The 2009 refinancing had added his name as a joint tenant, but the nature of that joint tenancy, the conditions, the history, the fact that I had been added to the title subsequently, made the situation considerably more complicated than he had assumed. Without my signature, the property could not be sold. He called my cell at 2:17. I was between patients at the clinic. I watched his name appear on the screen and I let it ring. He called again at 2:49, then twice more before 4 o'clock. The voicemails came in their own rhythm. The first one was controlled, formal, almost businesslike. "Please call me back. We need to discuss this as adults." The second was less controlled. "There are things you don't understand about this situation." The third dropped the pretense entirely. "I need you to call me back. This isn't what you think." I listened to all three in the parking lot after my last patient, sitting in my car with the heat running. Then I put my phone in my bag and drove to pick up a rotisserie chicken and some roasted sweet potato from the grocery store on Lakeshore, because I had worked 9 hours and I was hungry, and I had learned, somewhere in the last year, that taking care of yourself is not the same thing as being selfish. That evening I called my mother, not him, her. She answered on the second ring. She sounded tired in a way that had nothing to do with her health. "He's been on the phone all day," she said. "I know, he went through the spare room. I heard him in there for a long time." "Did he find anything else?" She was quiet. "Did you leave anything else to find?" I looked at my ceiling. The basement unit had low ceilings and a water stain near the light fixture that looked, depending on your mood, either like a dog or a cloud. "There's a folder in my old room," I said. "On the shelf in the closet, behind the winter boots." A very long pause. "He found it," she said. "I had kept notes. This is not something I am entirely proud of, but I am not ashamed of it either." When I had first discovered the original title, I hadn't known what to do. I was 27 years old, and I had just moved back into my childhood home to help care for my mother, and I had found a document that upended everything I thought I understood about the situation. So I had done what I always did when I didn't know what to do. I wrote things down. The folder had entries from the first week I moved back. Notes about the title, about what I had found, about the questions I had asked the lawyer I'd consulted quietly the following month. Notes about my mother's care and the gaps in his contribution to it. Notes about conversations, recorded accurately, with dates and times, in which he had pressured me to sign, minimized my concerns, or implied that my presence in the house was contingent on my cooperation. I had not kept those notes because I planned to use them against him. I had kept them because writing things down was how I made sense of the world, and because some part of me knew that the day would come when I would need to be sure of what was real. My mother told me he read the folder for a long time. She could hear the pages turning from the hallway. She did not go in. When he came out, he did not say anything. He went to the kitchen and stood at the sink for a while. Then he said, very quietly, she knew, the whole time. My mother told me she said yes, she knew. He asked her why I hadn't said anything, why I hadn't used it, hadn't fought him, hadn't challenged him. My mother said, because she was here for me, not for the house. I went back to my regular routine the next morning. The clinic was warm and busy, and smelled like antiseptic and the lavender diffuser that one of the physiotherapists kept on her desk. I had patients with frozen shoulders and post-surgical knees, and one elderly man recovering from a hip replacement who told me the same story about his grandchildren every single week. And I loved all of them with the particular fondness you develop for people who need your hands to help them get better. My phone buzzed twice before noon, both times his name. I didn't answer. At 12:30 he sent a text. It said, "I was wrong." 3 words. I read them standing in the break room with my coffee going cold. I had spent more than a year in that house managing the distance between what he claimed and what was true. I had watched him take credit for my mother's stability without acknowledging that half of what kept her stable was me. I had absorbed his comments about the cost of my presence, his implication that I was a guest, his careful arrangement of a reality in which he was the one making sacrifices and I was the one causing problems. I had done this quietly without confrontation, because my mother needed peace more than she needed justice, and I loved her more than I needed to be right. And now, 3 words. I won't pretend they meant nothing. They meant something. But they had arrived, I noticed, in the exact same week that he discovered he could not sell the house without me. That timing did not escape me. I typed back, "I know." Then I put the phone in my pocket and went back to work. 4 days later, I made a decision. I didn't make it out of generosity. I want to be honest about that. I made it out of something more complicated. A mixture of love for my mother, exhaustion with the ongoing situation, and a clear-eyed understanding of what I actually wanted, which had never been the house. I sat at my kitchen table on a Saturday morning with a mug of tea and the legal documents the title company had sent me when I'd requested a copy of the full ownership history. I read through everything carefully. I had done this before, but I read it again, because I wanted to be certain I understood exactly what I was giving up, and exactly what I was choosing. Then I called a real estate lawyer in Sudbury, whose name I had gotten from a colleague. She was practical and direct and did not waste my time. I explained the situation. She explained my options. I told her what I wanted to do. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You understand you don't have to do this." "I know," I said. "You have significant legal standing here." "I know that too." "All right," she said. "Let's get started." The transfer took 8 days to process. I signed what needed to be signed, had it notarized at a drugstore on Elm Street on a Wednesday afternoon between shifts, and authorized the courier that Friday. The package contained the completed transfer documents and a single handwritten note on a piece of paper I had torn from the back of a notebook. I wrote one sentence. I didn't want the house. I only ever wanted a mother who wasn't afraid to need me. The courier delivered the package on a Monday morning. My mother called me that afternoon. She had been crying. I could tell from the particular flatness in her voice, the way it went very calm when she was feeling things she couldn't manage out loud. He opened it, she said. I know. He sat at the table for a long time. Okay, he read your note. A pause. He read it more than once. I looked out my basement window at the fence and the gray sky. A squirrel was doing something purposeful with a piece of crust near the base of the post. I watched it for a moment. How are you doing? I asked her. She laughed a little, which was not what I expected. A short, tired laugh. I have a daughter who just gave away her legal interest in a house she never asked for, she said, and a husband who spent 3 years fighting her for it. Another pause. I don't think I'm doing very well, honestly. That's a fair answer. Will you come for tea on Saturday? I thought about it. Not the question, exactly. I knew I would go. I was thinking about what it would feel like to walk through that door again, to sit at that kitchen table, to be in the same room as him. I was thinking about whether I was ready. Yes, I said. I'll come Saturday. He filed the transfer documents the following week. My name came off the title, and the house on Clearwater Crescent passed into his and my mother's joint ownership, the way he had always wanted. He did not list it for sale. I don't know if he ever will. My mother told me gradually over the months that followed that something in him had changed after he read the folder. Not dramatically, he was not a man who did things dramatically, but in small ways. He started driving her to her physiotherapy appointments himself. He asked the occupational therapist questions, which he had never done before. He learned which medication she took in the morning and which one she took at night, a thing he had never bothered with in the 11 months I lived in that house managing her care. My mother said, I think he finally understood that someone had been doing a job he thought was being done on its own. I went for tea on Saturdays for a while. It was not easy, exactly, but it was possible. He made the tea and didn't speak much, and didn't meet my eyes directly, which I found in its way more honest than anything he had said to me in 3 years. At some point he started making shortbread on the days I came. He never mentioned it, he just put it on the table. I don't know what to call that. I'm not sure it matters what I call it. What I know is this. I gave up a legal claim to a house that was never about the house. I gave it up because holding on to it would have meant staying in a fight I no longer wanted to win. It would have meant making the house the thing, when the thing had never been the house. My mother put my name on that title because she wanted me to have a place to land. I landed. I stayed as long as she needed me. I built something else in the meantime, quietly, carefully, the way you do when you're not entirely sure you're going to need it, but you suspect you will. And when the moment came, I walked out the door with a bag that had been packed for 5 months, into a life that already existed and was already mine. He got the house. Every wall, every room, every memory inside it. Some nights I drive past Clearwater Crescent on my way home from a late shift. I don't always mean to. It's just that it's still on the way. The light in the front room is usually on. Sometimes I can see the blue flicker of the television through the curtains. It looks like a house where people live. I hope it is. Before you go, I want to know what you think. Was I right to let it go? Or would you have held on? Leave it in the comments. And if this story reminded you of something you've been carrying, pass it on. Sometimes just knowing someone else has been in the same house helps.